Namaste. So I thought the last one is the previous video was the last one in the Make in India manufacturing, why manufacturing will take off in India. But because I wanted to show you another video where there's a deeper discussion on PLI schemes. So this I wish would be the last video on Make in India or why manufacturing will take off in India. Let us go to that video, listen to it. If it is too technical, leave it. I will explain what they're trying to, what some people there are using their brains and asking some questions. We will see what, but if it's too technical, leave it. But I will try to explain what inputs that I want to share with you. But first, just let us listen. Okay, let's go there.
Yes, so it's Mr. Somanathan has obliged me to ask the question. I must do it, and I'll elaborate a little. As I said, I was worried about something like the PLI saying on such a large, instead of just picking one or two winners, you are picking already 14 winners. You are creating politically a situation where there will be more and more demand from more and more sectors and more states. And people will say, why have you not got me a PLI? Why have you not, you're creating a political competition. Now, Mr. Somanathan says that, formally speaking...
Mr. Somanathan will say what he wants to say.
Okay. Okay, he'll say what he says. As I understand, the PLI is 197,000 crores over 7 years. That is a modest sum of money. It's not very much. Even if a significant part of it gets wasted, it's not a very large waste. However, at the same time, over and above the PLI, there is a very substantial amount of import duties, up to 40% in many cases, which adds to the thing. Not only that, in the case of something like the silicon fabs and display glass, 50% subsidy was announced. Now on this, one single proposal of Vedanta Foxconn, $20 billion. Will you give them a 50%? One single company is going to get $10 billion. And if we say we're going to have another 5 or 6 fabs, if you see the sums that then get allotted on this, it would be more than the entire Narega allocation. That's what I wrote about. I said, what are these enormous sums of money being given out? Raghuram Rajan has argued cogently, why don't you just import these damn things? There is very little real value in putting up the basic silicon fabs. Why don't you, it's like importing copper ore and converting it into copper things. So, why are you spending so much money on capital intensive things when capital is not our strong point? If our strong point is design, you import the stuff, you design it, build on it, that's where the real jobs are, that's where the real thing is.
So, great, we have one each.
So let me I think you've heard the question. I don't want to repeat the question for you, but normally, see, this is well-known economic thinking that you operate on your strengths, right? What is India strong at? So let us do what we are good at. Let us not do what we are good at. Whatever we are bad at, let us buy from outside. This is extremely first order, simplistic, and I don't want to use more harsher words, but see, no country is, this is what I explained in one of the, no country is born with strengths and weaknesses. Japan was bombed. You go and see what Japan is doing today. Japan was bombed in 1940s. I don't know, at the end of the World War II, right? I don't know, Hiroshima, Nagasaki. Today, where is Japan? So Japan didn't start, it started understanding the strengths that it has to acquire. I will operate on my strength. I will not do where I'm weak. If somebody is better than me, I will buy. No. If you can acquire strength by investing in yourself and you think that will add to your GDP and you can generate jobs and you need those jobs here, it is better you start acquiring jobs. Yeah, today somebody is better, but you can compete, right? So this logic of economic thinking that people normally argue, oh, India is not good at it, India is good at IT, but in 60s, 70s, 80s, we were not even good at IT, so we should never do IT also, by that stupid logic. So when you start thinking about economy, it is not about whether we are good or bad. Can we take, I remember trying to explain this in one of the videos, if we can take steps 1 to 10 or 1 to 100, some steps by government, some steps by the entrepreneur, some steps by the citizen, some steps by the ecosystem, and do whatever is required, and we can become competitive. Why should we not become competitive? Why should we not get market share in that sector if we can create jobs here? If we can't create jobs here, and if there are other complexities, that's separate discussion. Even if we can't create jobs, if we can get market share just by using robots, why should we not go and get? So this thinking that this is not our strength, capital is not our strength. If it's not our strength, and if you think capital is becoming good at capital is something very important, you go ahead and do it. Do capital market reforms, bring down your inflation, make sure that you become strong at capital, right? So this notion of India is always like this, it will be like this. So if you can watch this video, and you will roll on the floor, I'm telling you, because the kind of changes that this government has brought about, which we have failed to do for 75 years, like something like defense, where we should be competitive because we are such a big nation with any and with I can't use not use the word enemies, but with neighborhood which is not very favorable to us. At least we have an adversarial relationship. We cannot depend on defense for we can't depend on the world for the defense equipment, right? We should have started building competencies in 60s. Now by this time we would have created 4, 5 or maybe 10 great defense companies in India, right? We would have been at the cutting edge defense technology by now. But this thinking, why I'm trying to explain this is, and especially when people name economies who are close to Congress, you can just brush off the question because this is more of a political question. Example is Raghuram Rajan, that previous CEA Subramaniam. All these are Congress stooges in my view. I may be wrong. I know it's a public video, but I feel that this notion that we are not strong. No. Should we become strong? Is it imperative on us that we become strong in defense so that we can create jobs here, so that we are not dependent on other countries and their foreign policy will determine our foreign policy? Should we do it? If we start today, can we become strong in 5, 10, 15, 20 years? Then are there people here to get employed? If yes, then go ahead and become strong boss. What is this? I am not strong. If you're not strong and if you have to become strong, you should go ahead and try. Let us see the answers they give so that I'll explain you. They detailedly explain the PLI scheme. I will try to summarize for non-finance people. Okay, let me go there. No, sorry. Yes.
Okay. I'll just answer the question on the exodus. I don't think it's a matter of worry, and there is no desperation for Indians to get out of India. There are two parts to it. There's a positive and there's a negative. The negative part is, I think there is a shortage of high quality education supply in India. I think what you see as exodus is not a desperation to get out of India, but actually to get better quality education. Actually, one of India's biggest imports and services is actually both means you'll actually produce ambassador cars all over again. So that's the little twist. Thanks. So, okay. Right.
Yeah, I think your question was regarding labor and employment. It's lost employment. Actually, employment only increased. There's a concept that this is there. Ultimately, when the companies get strengthened and they start growing, labor only increases. In fact, not resulting in. We have identified to explain why we have done what. The question, I think it's a very valid and if they start growing, labor only increases. In fact, quality of jobs also increases.
So, thank you for that question. I think it's a very valid and important point that you raised, and I think one that. Yeah. So, I think it's an important question that's been raised and one that needs careful thought on the part of the government. But what I'm trying to do, or will try to do, is to explain why we have done what we have done. So first, why PLI? So we have identified certain areas of the economy where market forces are not resulting in production of goods that we think have to be produced in India for a variety of reasons. Now those reasons are primarily two. There are certain sectors where we think there is a strategic need for a substantial part of India's requirements of those goods to be produced in India, regardless of the fact that they may actually be cheaper to obtain through international trade. So the Raghuram Rajan argument doesn't apply because I'll give you two examples. And we learnt of this through two incidents, one COVID and two Galwan. So during COVID, if we were dependent for antibiotics on one country, a country that is not very friendly to India, we realized that we could have a trade embargo on drugs and we would be crippled. We would have something much worse than COVID going on in India if we had an embargo on certain supplies. And there's almost only one country in the world which supplies many of these things. It's a country that is not very friendly to India. So this cannot be decided on the touchstone of economics. So there's one set of things which are non-economic, and semiconductors fall in the same category. That we have found that almost all the semiconductors tend to come from one part of the world, which is either China or a
island that could become China or and so on. So it's there is a reason for, and there are other countries that are offering equal or better industrial subsidies in that sector, including the country where Dr. Raghuram Rajan resides. So we are actually, in that case, doing it for non-economic reasons. However, there's a second area where we're doing PLI schemes, and this is the area where we think, now again, this is a traditional argument in trade, that India has the potential for comparative advantage, but these comparative advantages can only come about if we attain scale, and that cannot happen overnight. We have certain competitive disadvantages to start with, but if we overcome those advantages, then over a limited period of time, the infant industry can grow up and not remain a perpetual feeding bottle case. So yes, that's the concept. Now, within this concept, we've had these 14 sectors. I don't remember all of them offhand, but I can tell you some of them. So in the strategic category are semiconductors, advanced cell batteries, which are essential for us to store our solar and wind power. And these are targeted at particular kinds of new high technology batteries that have high storage density. We have semiconductors, of course. We have electronic vehicles, where we think India, this is going to be the vehicle of the future. We missed the first automobile revolution. We don't want to miss the second automobile revolution by having to be an importer of car technology and cars forever. And and then specialty steels. So there are certain specialty steels that also have defense implications. We don't manufacture them, we import them from China. So these are cases where the requirements were strategic. Then there are those where the requirements or the concept is economic. So some of them, like electronics, cell phones, these are primarily economic. What we've seen is that we don't have the clusters that are able to provide components to cell phone manufacturers. Creating that involves a higher cost for the manufacturer, but it is something that can be addressed over a limited period of time. The point on tariffs is very relevant. I think it's a bad idea to combine tariffs and PLI at the same time, but let's also look at some of these economic cases. We have this zero tariff on ITA goods, which means that we cannot impose tariffs on electronic items. So we don't have the option of a moderate tariff over a moderate period of time and then graduate from it, because it has to be zero. This was something that the United States insisted on at a time when it was the powerhouse, and is now very much in favor of today's powerhouse, which is China, but it's written in stone. So we can't change this. So tariffs are not an option in certain sectors where we have PLIs. That's why we have PLIs. In other areas where we theoretically can impose tariffs, we have FTAs with countries like Thailand, Indonesia, and we have a limited ability to enforce rules of origin. And we have often found that a China tariff immediately leads to an increase in imports of the same goods via Thailand or Indonesia, and with perhaps a screwdriver being added there or a label being changed. And we have limited ability to enforce rules of origin without becoming intrusive in our customs inspections, which increases bribery, which we don't want to do. So we are caught in a kind of international trade conundrum. So we have decided in some of these cases to go with PLIs. Now, one of the things we are doing, and the ambassador example is a good one, is that every PLI scheme mandatorily has a taper. So it starts at a high level of subsidy and ends at a much lower level of subsidy. So typically it starts, and by the way, most of them have rates that are between 6 and 7% at the starting point. So it's not 20, 30% protection. It's a subsidy that's typically 6% to start with, 7% to start with, tapering down to 2% in the last year. The taper is an essential part of every one of them except semiconductors. And on the fiscal cost, it's 197 excluding semiconductors. With semiconductors, it's 273. And semiconductors is a special case. Now, in terms of fiscal affordability, we've actually, this was mentioned in, I think, Subramaniam's earlier presentation. We had systems called the Merchandise Export Incentive Scheme and the Service Export Incentive Scheme. The costs had risen from about 10,000 crores to 50,000 crores per annum over a period of 4 years without any material increase in exports. It is that which has been restructured. We now have a much smaller part of it going as reimbursement of trade levies imposed by the states, which are not in the GST system. That's worth about 20,000, and it's a 30,000 crore saving that we have earmarked for PLI scheme. So we're doing this in a fiscally neutral way. Semiconductors goes above that fiscally neutral amount. That was a strategic choice that goes beyond the savings that we've got. So so is it a case of, prasad distributed at the temple and every industrialist wants some of it? Yes, to an extent the demands are there, but up to now the government has stood within this fiscal allocation, and we are making the departments make hard choices. So if you give more to this, you give less to that. The finance ministry gives advice but doesn't actually sit in on the decision of which sector to choose. We've said, look, it's a fixed pie. You can decide how to share this pie, but these are the considerations. So it's the Niti Aayog and the Department of Industrial Promotion that are actually taking those decisions on which sector, what rate. But we have some rules, taper being one of the key rules, that we will not approve a structure that doesn't have a distinct taper, where the rate of subsidy in the last year is closer to zero. You can start wherever you like, but you end at close to zero. And that will happen over a fixed period of time of 5 to 7 years at the maximum. So yes, there are, obviously in every country, industrial lobbies are powerful, they do lobby. But so far, I think the number of egregious cases which are neither economic nor strategic, I'm not able to find too many of them. If they are there, well, there will be some exceptions perhaps, but as of now, no. So that's the best I can answer your question.
So let's get back. I think you have heard the answer. Leave if you have not understood. I will first deal with the semiconductor reasoning. Semiconductor, he says, is a strategic sector, and we don't want to depend on Taiwan, where the large part of the manufacturing is coming from Taiwan. And we don't, because see, if you know, the whole world is now becoming digital. Digital is not just a software part. There is a, see, how do you convert the real world into digital, like analog world into digital? Through sensors or semiconductor sensors, right? So semiconductors is going to become ubiquitous, like it is going to be part of your shirt, wherever, everything is going to be filled with semiconductors. And if it's going to and collect data, and you build businesses on it, and that if something is so strategic, if you are not good at it and you are perennially dependent, like we are now perennially dependent on crude on let's say Middle East countries or US or Russia. Now let's say tomorrow we also start depending on semiconductors, which are going to become ubiquitous in every walk of our life, which is going to be the input to the digital India that we have already built. Don't you think you should also become competent in it? Yeah, we have a disadvantages. We can't build a fab. We may not actually be successful even after putting maybe few billions of dollars, and we may fail. But should we not try? It's such a strategic sector for us. Are we having so many jobs that we can leave it to some other country like Japan? No, we can't do it. So this is, see, why I'm trying to say this is, like, if you have to become super at digital India, sensors are the I'm using sensor to make you understand converting the analog or the real world into binary or the digital world. So every device will start having sensors, semiconductors. Semiconductors will be all pervasive, and you can't say I will import them because I can't manufacture at as cheaper rate as Taiwan. If you can take steps 1 to 100 and become cheaper or as good or little bit costlier, must go ahead, not take 5, 10, 15 years. Do it. No country is born with strengths and weaknesses. So one thing I want to reinforce, or please, whoever says what, whichever economist is blabbering, whatever I am blabbering today, right? Like somebody will blabber, don't believe or don't, just take this mental model. There is a per capita. Let's say you're a father of India. You have 1.4 billion people under you. You are 200-year-old guy, and then all of these guys are your children. Each one has different competencies, different levels of education, different strengths, different weaknesses, different profiles, and there is a opportunity out there. So as India, you have to provide jobs to all of these guys, and there are opportunities. There are headwinds and tailwinds. Let me put like that. There are external headwinds and tailwinds, and as India, you have your own strengths and challenges. What should you do if you have to provide jobs to all these people, and your current per capita is 2,000, so you want to become a, let's say, 15,000 per capita? You have to start laying foundation as many sectors as you think you need to create job for all these guys, right? In the next 15-20 years, just crores and crores of people, half the population is less than 25. If you don't build competencies across all the sectors, where will these guys go? Right? Please get this. You have to build competencies in sectors that are required for your population to grow their per capita. This is the mental model you use, and then listen to economists. Because people have these narratives, this you are not strong, so buy from outside. No boss, if I can become strong by taking 100, 200, 300 steps, become strong. And if you think you need those jobs, better. If you can't do it, ask people who can do it to come and set up their factories here, like what that Foxconn and Vedanta deal is that is getting done in Gujarat. So anybody says anything economics, don't listen to anybody. You do it your own. Current per capita, current demographic profile, what is the age, what are our strengths as a country, what are our weaknesses, what are the external tailwinds, what are the external headwinds or challenges, what all should Indians do, or what all should India as a country do so that this per capita can increase from 2,000 to 15,000 in the next 20 years. In how many sectors we have to lay foundation, and what should government do for it, what should citizens do for it, what should entrepreneurs do for it, and what should rest of the country do for it. So this is how you see and see the policy of any government. This is how, I'm not trying to, I think this mental model is logical, right? You need not believe anybody. So that question that, so whenever you listen to Congress economists like Raghuram Rajan, you can assume that it is just a political narrative that people are trying to build. I would actually urge you to go through that video. You will be like super excited as Indian, leave about investing. Look at the kind of transformation shift that is happening across sectors, because you have to build competencies in as many sectors as required to create jobs for all these people in a way that per capita will increase. Right? Only then your country's per capita will grow. See, this is extremely important. Please take this mental model. And semiconductors, I have told you that as they become ubiquitous, as they become all pervasive, the only way to convert analog world into digital world is through semiconductors, and we will need so many billions of dollars of semiconductors, and we don't want to be in a position that we are dependent on some other country, right? It's like currently our defense is dependent on Russia, so your foreign policy can't go against Russia, right? You are perennially dependent on that guy. Why did we not start building competencies 60 years back? Even a stupid fellow, if he starts working 60 years back, he will have become super now, right? So this is how you think about building competencies across sectors. And other thing that I wanted to because I got a feedback, one question from one of the clients is if we just build good schools and good colleges, is everything taken care of? Which is the most stupidest mental model I've heard. Because let's say I build the best of the schools and best of the colleges and educate everybody. I pay freely. I fund everybody's education and they come out. And there are no jobs. Jobs are not function of education alone. Please get this. Education is just one requirement. Jobs are a function of building the ecosystem, creating the policies, doing everything that is needed for entrepreneurs and investors to give predictability to them that they will make profits and IRR, and only then the jobs will come. Only when the jobs come, people will start acquiring skills. So what will happen in a country where everybody is educated but you don't build competencies in sectors, the cream will move out. That's what happened before 90s, right? We didn't build competencies in any sector, so the cream got into the best colleges, IITs, and brain drain. You used to hear this word brain drain, right? And everybody who has access to education, who are really smart, let's assume everybody has access to education, but there's no other country which can take crores of Indians every year, right? Even if they are good. So only the cream will go out. What will happen to the rest of India? So job creation in any economy is a function of building competencies in as many sectors that are required for that country to grow their per capitas. Please get this, or maintain. If you are already super rich like Germany or US or UK, 60,000, 80,000, 70,000 per capita, even for you should make sure that that per capita doesn't fall, right? So you have to always, building competencies should be the way to go in creating an economy, right? Please get this mental model that I will build good schools, we will build good hospitals, everything will be taken care of. No, everything will be taken care of only for the cream, they will move out. What will happen to the rest of the country? And please imagine, because as per capita will only grow if you are competent in futuristic sectors. Let's imagine the per capita of India if you are not competent in IT. Let's say last 30 years we didn't do IT. Do you think our per capita will be 2,500? I don't think so. So your per capita will only grow when you are in futuristic sectors where there is growth. Let's not even call futuristic sectors. You have to participate in sectors where there is growth and garner market shares, so that as you get higher paying jobs, it will get trickled down, as I've explained in the last video. I don't want to repeat it. Trickle down to your drivers and everybody else who are not as skilled as the cream of the society. So this mental model, I wanted to address that people have this, that I'll just build good schools, everything is taken care of. No, you have to, first thing as a country is build competencies, and skills will be acquired by people. Most people are good enough to acquire skill if you give them predictability that if they acquire skills, their life will substantially change. So what India failed in the last 70 years is we didn't build competencies in as many sectors as it is required for such a huge population. We just built 2-3 sectors, so few people could really go up, but the rest were left behind, right? So we should build. We are 1.4 billion. The economic model that will work for Singapore will not work for us. We need to, but the same mental model will work for every economy, right? What is your current per capita? What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are the external challenges and opportunities, tailwinds and headwinds? And what is your demographic profile? And what all these 4 or 5 stakeholders, government, investors, citizens and rest of the country should do to create competencies in sectors so that their per capita will grow. If you are poor, if you are super rich, at least your per capita is maintained. So And the last point I wanted to cover before I end this Make in India series is the fruits of the investment will come only after the investment phase, right? As India is doing all these policies, laying roads, whatever India is doing, the foundation you may not see the results immediately. So in some sectors results will be sooner, in some it will take time. So we should keep these things in mind when we are searching for data, because I remember people are waiting for data to the data about growth will come only when the investment phase is over, right? So I think these two things I wanted to address in this video. Please get this, that please watch that video. I will share the link. Like, you will feel extremely excited as India live about investing, that things are really policy wise we have done. They have explained from 1940 post independence what all India has done. They explained. They have given really great presentations. We should all be grateful to these guys. So please do watch that video. Take time maybe, but please do watch this video so that you will know the nitty gritty of policy making and appreciate what our country is doing in terms of laying foundation across many sectors. So I think I have covered. I think this will be the last Make in India video. Let's see. Thank you.